Chapter 6. When I saw her walking down the opposite side of the street, all the variations blended into one great jumble, a muddle of sentences I had contrived and memorized in my long preparatory gymnastics swam in my brain. Do you like art? Why did you look only at the small window? And a dozen others. Most insistent of all arose a question I had rejected as uncouth, one that made me blush and feel even more ridiculous. Do you like Castell? These sentences, individually and in combination, formed a confused, constantly shifting jigsaw puzzle until I realized that it was pointless to worry about what to say. I remembered that it was she who would have to take the initiative in any conversation. From the moment I felt idiotically calm, I think the thought even crossed my mind, also idiotically. Now we'll see how she manages to pull it off. Meanwhile, and in spite of any rationalizations, I felt so nervous and distraught that I could think of nothing to do but follow her progress down the opposite sidewalk, completely overlooking the fact that if I wanted to offer her the hypothetical opportunity to ask me about an address, I could have to cross the street and make myself available. Could there be anything more grotesque than to expect her to shoot across the street to ask how to get somewhere? What should I do? How long before I would have to make a move? I felt unutterably awkward. We continued this way for several blocks, she still walking purposefully. I was depressed, but I had to follow through to the end. It was unthinkable that after waiting months for this moment, I would let the opportunity slip by. Walking so rapidly, my mind was in such a whirl, produced a strange sensation. My thoughts were like a blind and clumsy worm being borne along in a speeding automobile. At Calle San Martin, she turned the corner, walked a few steps, and entered the offices of the tea company. I realized I would have to react quickly, and I followed her inside, although I felt that in those seconds I was committing an unbalanced and monstrous act. She was waiting for the elevator. No one else was in the lobby. Someone more audacious than I inside my body asked this incredible, inane question. Is this the tea company building? A sign with letters several meters high and covering a large portion of the building's facade proclaimed that this was indeed the tea company. Nevertheless, she turned quite naturally and answered that it was. Later, reflecting on my question and the naturalness and calmness of her answer, I came to the conclusion that you do not always see signs when they are there, or if they are that large. Therefore, my question was not as hopelessly stupid as I had first thought. As soon as she saw who I was, she blushed so deeply that I knew she recognized me, a variation that had never occurred to me, yet one that was entirely logical because my photograph frequently appeared in magazines and newspapers. I was so overcome with emotion that all I could manage was a second blundering question. I asked abruptly, "Why are you blushing?" She blushed even more and was opening her mouth to reply when I blurted out, now completely out of control, "You're blustering because you recognize me and you think this meeting is a coincidence, but it isn't. There are no coincidences. I have been thinking about you for months. Today I saw you on the street and I followed you. I have something important to ask you, something about the small window. Do you understand?" She looked frightened. "The small window," she stammered. "But what small window?" I felt my knees buckle beneath me. Was it possible she didn't remember? Then the window had not been of the slightest importance to her. She had felt nothing more than casual curiosity. I felt grotesque. My head was whirling. Everything I had thought and planned during all those months, including the present moment, was ridiculous beyond belief. Another of my typical imaginings, as preposterous as the recreation of a dinosaur starting from a single broken vertebra. The girl was near tears. I felt my world collapsing about me with no shred of calm or hope to cling to. I found myself saying something that now I am embarrassed even to write. I see that I have been mistaken. Good afternoon. I rushed from the building. I walked, almost ran, not knowing what direction I chose. I was a block from the building when I heard a voice calling behind me. Wait, wait. It was she. She had followed me, not daring to stop me, but she had, and now did not know how to justify what she had done. In a low voice, she said, "Forgive me, please, forgive my stupidity." I was startled. Seconds before, the world had been a chaos of meaningless objects and beings. Now I felt it falling into place, obedient to logic and order. Mutely, I listened. I didn't realize you were asking about the scene in your painting, she said tremulously. Unconsciously, I seized her arm. Then you remember it. She stood a moment without speaking, staring at the ground. Then she said slowly, "It is never out of my mind." Then she said something very strange. She seemed to have regretted what she had said because she turned abruptly and hurried away, almost running. After a surprised instant, I caught her until I realized what a ridiculous figure I cut. I looked all around and then continued at a fast but more than normal pace. This decision was determined by two factors. First, it was grotesque for a well-known man to be chasing down the street after a woman. Second, it was not necessary. The latter was primary. I could see her any time, going in and out of the office. Why charge down the street like a madman? What mattered, what really mattered, was that she remembered the scene in the window. It is never out of my mind. I was happy. I felt that I could accomplish anything. And my only regret was having lost control while waiting for the elevator. And then a second time now running after her like a lunatic, when it was clear I could find her at her office anytime I wanted.